Here we go. There we go. This is what I wanted to do. Okay. So the first trend is silhouettes, which like the image pictured here. So the idea of having something backlit, like if you the sun was setting on the beach and someone was, you know, standing there and you took their picture, they would become silhouetted because they're backlit. So that's the first kind of trend. I think, I mean, silhouettes have been around forever, obviously, but I mean, as you guys know, trends are, they recycle, right? I mean, right now the high schoolers are wearing all the 90s stuff, which is too funny. It's like this fresh take on 90s. So, I mean, it definitely comes around. It's just like there's a fresh take on it somehow. Oh, I'm sorry, apparently I have a link in there that I keep clicking on. I need to stay away from that side. Okay, we can do this. I'm not gonna move my mouse. Okay, there we go. Masks and distance, of course. But I don't know if you guys have noticed, it's popping up. Like there are people getting their photos taken distanced with masks on to just, you know, document this time in history, really, if you think about it, when we look back on these photos and, you know, be like, oh yeah, remember that. Solo outdoors, which I was like, okay, what does that mean exactly? So I've determined it's people, I'll have a picture I'll show you that'll demonstrate what solo outdoors looks like. Because I was like, what's that? Subtle filters. We're kind of moving away. Filters for the, you know, especially like teenagers, young 20s especially, we're going crazy with filters. Now we're starting to see that scaled back a little bit, and they want to see it a little bit more subtle, a little bit more natural looking, not so filtered. Imagery with art, which I'll show you an example of that one too. Bird's eye view. So looking down. I think that's always classic, but I guess it's popular. It's trending in 2021.
Well, especially with drones.
That's true. You're right. With drones, it gives a whole new take on bird's eye and the things you can do. That's the truth.
Yeah.
You're right. Some of those images, I'm like, wow. Yeah. And just like, you know, everyday people are doing it now. It's crazy. Authentic imagery. And I looked it up to dive in a little deeper as to what does that mean? Because I could think, well, okay, just kind of like natural, real stuff. It's like authentic emotions, you know, and that's kind of the take. So I would dub this as like candid, like a kind of a candid photo, like showing someone's natural emotions in the moment. It's not staged. Cinemagraphs, like a moving picture. And I actually recently learned how to make these, so I can teach you if you want. We can do a class on cinemagraphs sometime, but they're pretty dreamy. And I'll show you a little example of a cinemagraph too. Soft background blur. I think that's one of those things too that's, you know, always nice. One of those things that never goes out of style, like our stripes.
That's right.
Nature everywhere. I kind of laughed at this. I was like, what's this mean? But I think people have always been into plants, but I think we're kind of seeing this in like pop culture a little bit more. The cactus, succulents sort of thing is kind of trending. Oops, we've got another participant. Ooh, it let me know this time. We have another joiner. There we go. Oops, I did the thing again. I'm so sorry. Woo, it's Wednesday, midday. I just want you to be able to see the whole. I need to keep my mouse away. Okay. Click, click, click. Color, and I'll show you what I mean by color, because color can kind of be like, well, duh. There's color, but I'll show you what I mean by color. staged still life. Still lifes are one of those things, they're like, you know, like in drawing and photography and painting, like they've been around forever, but like we're seeing them come like in a fresh way. I'm seeing a lot of contemporary artists like come at still lifes with fresh approaches, photographers. You're seeing lots of Instagram people, Facebook people, Pinterest, where you're seeing a lot more of this kind of photography. And then vertical photos. Vertical is very in right now. Bright light, which, hey, I think bright light's always nice. Or natural light. And selfie style. Does that ever go out of style or trend? I don't know. I think the kids will always do those, right?
Yes.
All right, so those are our photography trends for 2021. I have some examples of some, not all of these, just to kind of show you. Here's the masks and distance.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing it. I'm seeing a lot of this kind of stuff popping up. So yeah, we're definitely gonna look back and remember 2020, you know, and this time. Okay, so this is the solo outdoors.
Mhm.
So it's the whole idea of like this whole play on traveling. So people are wanting individual shots with nature. Plus it's nature everywhere and it's vertical. So this one's really a real good one apparently. It's hitting all the hot trends. This is an example of art and photography. So like there's kind of, with this whole digital art world, photographers are sort of creating this, almost this other kind of category, which you could argue maybe early photographers like Man Ray, if you know who Man Ray is, did some of these types of things. So it's not, again, it's not brand new. It's not like this has just been invented, but with the whole take on digital art, we're seeing photography and art being merged in a new way, thus kind of producing a new style of photography, where we can clearly look at this and know. Yeah.
You can buy that umbrella from the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Can you? Oh, that
Yeah.
would be fun. That's awesome. They have so many fun things at that store.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I could spend a lot of money there. Soft background blur example, again, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. Is, you know, pretty common, like the whole shallow depth of field. But then again, we also have a vertical orientation, so that's good. This one is what I would call the authentic imagery. Pure, like, bliss, a pure natural emotion. This is what I would always call like a candid shot, right? Like it's natural, not staged. But yeah, this whole idea of just authentic imagery. Staged still life photography and bird's eye view. Right, so we've got that in here too, where we've got this above view. So bird's eye view doesn't, I mean, it can be obviously drone, and I think that's a huge piece of it because that's a big world of photography now. But I think it also could be specific ways we look at certain viewpoints of even things like a still life. And then this next series, I linked this, that I was laughing at this. There's a whole series that this photographer did, and she called it like, what did she say? After dinner, or what? Finished eating, and they're all photos of, like, you know, the mess from when she's done eating. So this one I linked in the notes in this slideshow, so you can check out. There's a bunch of them, but I was just like, oh, too funny. So this example is kind of like the play on filter of what I would have dubbed, like on the right is a a fairly intense filter. Like, I feel like that's fairly intense. So what you're seeing now is more, they're wanting to keep it on the, like on the left, more natural, maybe like brightening up a little, bumping up a little, but we're not seeing like heavy filters put on things like it, that was popular several years ago. This is what I mean by color, however. So bringing bold colors into the mix, potentially through post-editing or using soft gels. So if you remember, I talked about soft gels in an earlier class, which is like essentially a filter that you can put over your lens. It's almost like a transparency kind of, but it's colored, but you can see through it. And you can buy them on Amazon and different places, but they will produce effects like this. So while we're not seeing like filtered, we are seeing kind of this type of aesthetic. This is the example of the Cinemagraph, which I am just going to show you really quick. I just pulled this one from Wikipedia. But you can see how it's very subtle. It's not like the GIF or GIF image that's like moving more rapidly, but it's still with just a slight moving component. All right. So the challenges. The challenges kind of have like three sort of components to them. One would be composition, because I think when we're looking as photographers, whether, you know, professional photographer, hobby photographer, whatever, you know, you consider yourself, composition is always key. It's important, right? I mean, we've got to think about subject matter, but I think improving compositional skills and coming up with creative, different ways to look at things is a huge part of photography. The other component is theme. This category is probably the broadest of the three, but think of theme as being open to interpretations. Even though you'll have a specific theme, like obviously you'll still have freedom to create as you wish. And then there are some challenges based on themes. And then feeling. The last category of the three, I think feeling can be the hardest sometimes to convey. But in this category, the challenge based on feelings, your goal will be to convey a specific feeling through your photograph. And so there'll be some challenges sort of based around feeling. Some of them might sort of encompass all of them in a way. Okay, so January, this month, which I know we have since we started a little bit later into the month, you have actually less than a month, but you know, there's no real grades, of course, so you don't have to worry about that. But dynamic tension. So dynamic tension is this idea of using the energy and movement available in various features of the frame to draw the eye out of the picture in contrasting directions. So that's the official definition of dynamic tension. So it could be looking at the different edges of the image. You're seeing things moving in, moving out, different directions are sort of coming together in different ways. So there is a lot of different ways you could photograph dynamic tension, tons of different ways. You could look for something like this, for example, like a building, something that you're just going to naturally kind of walk by, maybe trees, looking up. But you could also perhaps set something up as well to create dynamic tension through a setup in a sense too. So this is an example of dynamic tension. This one, I believe there's a link included to look at more images, but you're just seeing all these different lines moving in different ways in and out of the frame. In a sense, it's different than leading lines in the sense that leading lines sort of kind of take you one place, Whereas this is almost taking you kind of all different places, and you're looking at kind of the interaction of these lines. Here's another example. There's a lot of building examples, but it certainly doesn't need to be building. This one could potentially be maybe a little bit of leading line, but at the same time, I think because you're also seeing things go off, still vertically, diagonally, that it could count as dynamic tension. Staircases are always great. Looking down, of course, you've got the bird's eye view into play here too. All right, February. February is going to be shadow, which I feel like it's appropriate, right? You know, see how long winter's gonna last. But you know, shadow I think is just so interesting to play with in photography. And I'm sure you've probably played with it before or you've noticed it, but I think it's interesting to be very intentional about it. Playing with really direct, intense light sources, where it's almost that the shadow is becoming the most important part of the image. And I think you can use very simple things, objects like the forks here, to create interesting compositions and shadows. It doesn't have to be anything major. Often if I'm like taking a walk, I always like look at the branches and the shadows that cast on the sidewalk. Or I always love fences too, when they cast like the diagonal, even lines on the sidewalk is really interesting. Or when I walk my dog, he's scared of his shadow because he's unfortunately starting to go blind and has cataracts, and he's getting old, and he'll kind of see his shadow and jump. But, you know, I'm always like looking at shadows when I'm walking, and just, I don't know, shadows are always intriguing, I think, and you can learn a lot from them. Here's just another fork and plate. But I mean, it could be, or bowl, it could be something as simple as when you're, you know, having dinner or you're just doing something. Just pay attention to the shadows and what's kind of going on. Another idea. Could set something up or do a little Photoshop. Susan, this one kind of reminded me of you when you said you collected all those games. I thought, you know,
yeah.
maybe you could get into your games pieces or interesting little things that you may have on shelves, knickknacks. Shine some light. Maybe they have some really cool, interesting shadows. Or even something like this where the actual flower is even cropped out of the frame completely, and the shadow really does become, you know, that kind of main area, the focal point, if you will. I mean, you may still kind of look here first, but I think either way you end up back here looking at this shadow. March is going to be geometry. Very broad subject, of course. I think it has subtle, creative, and compositional challenges, though, that I think will be interesting. So you could think of things that are round, triangular, square, etc. And I think like this is just good for beginners to advanced, because you can always come up with like creative ways. You could also think of this too as maybe repetition in a sense, although it doesn't have to show repetition. I mean, there's lots of different things you could do with geometry. I thought that was kind of interesting. All right, April. Guess I didn't have as many examples of geometry, I guess. April is going to be small world. You could think of this as like a macro challenge if you want to, but I like the kind of further take on not just macro photography, but this idea that you're creating a scene. I think these little people are really cute, and a lot of my examples have the little people, but you wouldn't have to have little people. You could do lots of little ideas to set something up. I mean, even like, again, Susan's game pieces, or if there's something you collect, or I don't know, could set something up on a shelf, or could be kind of interesting. But this idea of kind of creating this little kind of scene or environment. So I'll show you a couple other kind of cute ones. I'm like, I bet Amazon has some little people. I think I'm gonna try to find some. I did a photography challenge with my high schoolers a couple years ago, and I gave them each a plastic dinosaur figurine. I got a whole bunch of them. I let them pick them out. I said, you're gonna adopt this dino. You have to take good care of it, and you have to take it with you, and you have to document it going on an adventure. And so they came back with the most hysterical photos of their little dinos that went on just little adventures. Some went around the school. Some went on like trips up to the mountains with their families over the weekends. And some went to restaurants because, you know, it was before COVID times. And so, you know, you could be creative with what this could be. I thought this one was really cute, the dancing. Again, lots of these are little people, but it wouldn't have to be little people. Hey, this one. I'm sure there's some Photoshop involved here, but
Mhm.
I thought it was cute.
Oh, that is cute.
So yeah, just creating like a little scene or a little kind of your own world. And there's, you know, lots of different things you could do. All right, May is going to be dark and moody backgrounds. And I want to tell you guys, I did tell my students, some of my students, about the themes, and this one was their favorite. They were really excited about dark and moody backgrounds. So this kind of idea of playing with kind of dark and light, it's the whole idea in here. Actually, let me show you this, the Caravaggio painting. So this whole idea is to kind of play on these like Renaissance paintings of like drama and dark backgrounds, and kind of bringing this like focal point to the subject matter. So it could be something simple like a flower or an object, a person, but how can you create some sort of kind of dark versus light contrast to the extreme? Or it could be something like this, where your background is sort of has more of kind of a feeling to it, where again, dark and moody, it's not like it has to be pure black or pitch black, but just kind of creating this sense of drawing your eye inward to something. It's another example. Again, you're kind of, it's juxtaposition in a way because you're playing on this contrast of this light and this dark. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, we don't think about having our background be completely dark like this. June's inspiration, oh, they liked this one too. This one I think is going to be a little challenging, but I'm also really excited about. Create a series of photographs that have a certain vibe or mood to them. Some sort of feeling. Maybe it's a nostalgic feeling. Maybe it's, you know, all my students are very into, they call it like aesthetic photography, where everything is sort of has a pastel feeling to it. And that they would say that has a mood. So see how you can interpret that. I don't want to go into too much detail because I think that's the point, is it could just sort of maybe have a color scheme to it, or a subject matter, or maybe there's a certain level of like sort of whimsy to it, or it's sort of whimsical in a way. So here are some more examples. And I did, some of these are a little bit more pastel-y, but they wouldn't have to be, not at all. But oftentimes I think playing with color can sort of create a mood or a feeling. You know, we kind of talk about like warm and cool colors, or here you've got this like warm versus kind of cool playing, which is interesting. The other idea you could almost approach this as is thinking about, like if you've heard the term mood board, right? Where you're kind of creating a sort of vision and everything sort of has a similar sort of feeling or some sort of unity, that it sort of goes together to kind of create this mood. So even a series of photos for this could be really, really nice.
Mhm.
Again, I thought this one was really nice too, just like really simple. You sort of get this mood, this like kind of light rain, the puddle. I don't know, I feel like we've all kind of seen this view, you know, I feel like it's, you know, we look down when it's raining and we see this, you know. So sometimes having a photo that is like really relatable to a lot of people can help create a mood. July is movement, and the idea of exploring the concept of movement in your photos, which I suppose if, you know, you do fireworks, or that could be some type of movement for July. But I think movement, I mean, while it could be like physical movement, it could also be the concept of movement too, which could look different. And movement's a pretty broad, could be very broad. This one kind of got blurred, but I just like the idea of this, like you can like feel the wind almost, right? It's like how they are at that angle, that kind of frozen in time. I'm sort of a sucker for like a really kind of blurry photograph. I don't know why, I just kind of like them. They just kind of have this charm to them, you know? But it could be really anything. August is going to be a storytelling theme, and the theme is warmth. So telling a story through your photographs, just somehow, how could you convey a feeling of warmth somehow? Oops, I forgot. I guess I meant to put some more examples of that, but I guess I forgot. So that one will be nice and broad for you guys. September is another storytelling month. Portrait. It could be a portrait of you, could be like self-portrait, or it could be a portrait of someone else. Could be a portrait of a pet. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to think about the term portrait. And even the idea of portrait, I think in photography doesn't always necessarily need to include the whole face or even any of the face. I think you can approach that lots of different ways. Portraits could also include multiple people. They don't have to just be one person, but they could be. I always think of it too. I think storytelling or narrative, photojournalism, again, it all kind of has that authentic imagery sort of component, right? Because they're often candid. October is another storytelling, and it's perspective. And the idea could be how you could tell a story from a certain perspective, but there's a lot of different approaches to perspective. It could be a person's perspective to how they're experiencing something, so you can maybe get some insight into how they feel. It could be perspective as in like 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, or just a way we look at something, So I think perspective could be interpreted in lots of different ways. Or somebody else, it could be a dog's perspective, or, down low, or something different. Someone else's perspective or your own perspective.
Bird's eye.
I know, right? This photo cracked me. Just sitting in the corner there, hanging out. November is black and white, and while any of these photos that you take in previous months could ultimately be black and white because you want them to be, I think intentionally shooting for black and white can be a good thing to practice. And of course, you could use Photoshop, you could use Pixlr. If you're shooting on your phone, lots of phones have apps right on there. And I think it's interesting to pay attention to lights and darks, because when you turn things black and white, of course, we're seeing the value then. So paying attention to what will be light in the composition versus what will be dark, having this kind of nice balance can be interesting. I always find, I don't know, it's a different approach when you're going out with the intention of black and white. This is going to be black and white. So, and your subject matter could be really anything. It could be portraiture, could be architecture or scenery, landscapes. Could be still life, where you're setting up objects and photographing. Could be, again, candid or authentic imagery. Again, it could be this idea of a narrative. Again, a story, a photograph that tells a story. Something's going on. And then December is going to be storytelling new beginnings. And I think this one is good to interpret however you see fit. And I think it would be a good way to wrap up the year. It feels weird talking about the end of 2021 when we just started it, but I think thinking about new beginnings as we end a year going into a new year could be fun. And new beginnings can look a lot of different ways. This one got a little blurry, but a new beginning. Lee, you're going to have a new beginning pretty soon with that puppy coming home.
Very true.
You might have to take your December photographs a little early.
Yes.
I'd like to see your husband's natural, authentic emotions when he realizes how much he's going to have to
Oh, yeah.
get up for the puppy.
Yes. I agree.
in the beginning.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. All right, and then I wanted to show you this website that I just recently discovered. It's called 52frames.com. In this website, there are a bunch of just different photography challenges, and then you can submit them and look at other people's. So I just thought this would be cool to share with you, just because it could be fun to do. And then like you can look at the albums.
Oh, neat.
And then they have like Instagram posts. And then you can go up here and it says what the challenge is. And the current challenge is get low. And it'll give you like a little kind of blurb about it, tips and tutorials, obviously a little extra credit assignment, and then you can submit your photo.
Huh.
So I thought that was kind of cool if you're just looking for something else that you want to try out or anything like that. It could be fun.
Yeah.
And let's see, I also wanted to show you guys really quickly because last class I talked about where I print my photos. So I just wanted to show you the website. It's been a minute since I've actually logged on here, so to be honest, I don't even know what my password and my account is, but so it's prolabexpress.com. And again, it's like a digital dark room. So everything is like burned into the paper. It's not printed on top like you would get at Walgreens or, something like that. So if you go to prints, under photographic prints, what they'll do is they'll tell you what your file, this is all the file and print information. So right here, it'll tell you like, you have to make sure to save your files to 100%. It has to be 300 PPI. If you remember, when I talked about file sizes, the print number is 300. So they do want JPEGs. So it'll kind of tell you everything you need for sizing everything. And then let's see if right here. So here is they have 3 types of paper, and then look at all they have so many sizes. Like you could get a 3x3, 8x8. You can go all the way up to a 30x40, and they do wallets. So like, let's say you did your like senior portraits for someone and you're like, hey, I want to order some wallets. You can order wallets right from here. They're phenomenal. So yeah, these are great. I have done all of these papers before. I typically, like Fuji Luster is going to be like, not quite like matte, but it's not glossy. It's almost kind of like a classic traditional photo that you'd get developed, not glossy. And then gloss paper is, of course, glossy. Fuji Pearl paper is awesome. It has this like, it's hard to describe, but it almost does have a pearly finish. And you can see it. It's almost like when you look at it, you can see the finish is sort of pearly essentially. And then the deep matte paper, I love that paper. It's awesome. It's totally matte. It's almost like an art paper, but it's still photo paper. And I've actually gotten art prints made on it before too of my artwork. I have printed on the deep matte paper. And it's been really nice. So, and I have gotten a circle photograph from them before, like a complete circle. I saw it one time in a Good Housekeeping or something. It was a big square frame with a circle in it. And I grew up near Lake Michigan. So one summer I took a picture looking out at Lake Michigan and I got it printed in a big circle. and then frame it in a square. It's hanging up upstairs. Sometime I'll have to show you. But yeah, they can print circles for you. They can do all sorts of things. So, and again, you've got, let's see, a 5x7, 98 cents. So, I mean, it's not terrible depending on how much you're getting printed, but at the same time, this is archival. It's not going to fade. It's not printed on top of the surface. It's burned into the paper. So, yeah, and then it's been a little bit since I've ordered from them, but in the past they always did free shipping if you spent $15. And everything was always shipped like flat cardboard backing, wrapped in plastic, very well packaged. And then they also do, like, you can do photo books, cards. They have different decoration things for your homes, metal prints, gallery mounts, wood prints. They can print on wood for you.
Wow.
They can do all sorts of things. And they're constantly adding. This has grown since, like, when I was in college and toured their facilities. They do wall calendars, dry erase boards, bookmarks. They have a bunch of business things. I've gotten some big posters printed from them before that I had made that were really nice. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you the website just in case you're looking for something to use. They're a really great company, and everything they've done has been amazing. And I will tell you, to the file, whatever your file is called, it'll be printed on the back of your photo.
Oh, nice.
So, like, let's say you wanted to, like, sort of describe, like, oh, I went to the Grand Canyon spring break or something, you know, and you kind of title your pictures as to what you did and where you went. That would all be printed on the back of your photo, like in a really light print. So I don't know, could be useful, could be not, depending on what you're trying to do. But yeah, I thought I would show you that, and because I think it's nice. But yeah, do you guys have any questions or things you're wondering about, or anything else? How do you feel about the photography challenge? Do you think it's doable?
Yeah. I'm in.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Well, hey, how about this? For anyone who completes the full challenge, I will print you a photo book of your photos.
Oh my goodness.
And send it to you. So you can have your, I know it's a year away, but we'll do it.
Got something to show you. This is a friend of mine.
I'm going to spell it you.